Welcome to Cultivating and Harvesting EDI, presented by Creatives Empowered. My name is Shivani Sani. I'm one of the founding members and the current executive director of Creatives Empowered, which is Alberta's first and only nonprofit collective that is by and for film, TV, media, and arts pros who are Black, Indigenous, and people of color. I'd like to begin with a land acknowledgement. When we first launched Creatives Empowered, we did it in the midst of a pandemic. And for much of the pandemic, we have been operating virtually, but also doing so to serve everyone within the province of Alberta. As I mentioned, a virtual nonprofit, that's what Creatives Empowered is. And we serve all racialized talent within the colonial boundary known as Alberta. And we acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the traditional treaty territories of 4, 6, 7, 8, and 10, and along with the Métis Nation regions of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we acknowledge that we are on stolen land. These are the traditional territories of many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Specifically in Treaty 6, the Cree, the Dene, the Anishinaabe, the Saulteaux, the Nakota Iska, Nakota Sioux, and Blackfoot peoples, and specifically in Treaty 7, the people of the Blackfoot Confederacy in Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and the people of Stoney Nakoda in Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wellesley. Specifically in Treaty 8, the Cree, the Dene Tam, the Dene Za, the Dene Sulane, the Nakota Sioux, Iroquois, and Inuit peoples. We express with the utmost of respect our deepest gratitude for the manner in which these traditional peoples have honored the treaties, and in the spirit of reconciliation, we are committed to doing the same in how we live, work, and play on their traditional lands. So again, we are here today to talk about cultivating and harvesting EDI. And for today's discussion, I am joined by some amazing panelists. We have with us today Jordan Baylon, who is an artist, a community worker, a consultant, imagining justice and abundance, equity deserving peoples within the spaces of all relations, personal, communal, and societal. So Jordan devotes their attention to working at grassroots alongside equity deserving individuals and communities. We also have with us today Soni Dasmohapatra, a consultant, an educator, an arts practitioner who uses yoga and somatics as pathways of self-discovery, healing, and artistic creation. So Soni has built her career over the last 20 years in the sectors of government, higher learning, nonprofit, public education, and philanthropy. We also have with us here today Dinu Philip Alex, who is the founder of Next Evolution Ventures and a disruptive strategist motivated by breaking the system for the greater good. He has a background of implementing change at a root level and creating an atmosphere of cultivating and transforming ideas into viable solutions that create efficiencies, challenge the norm, and prepare for the future. And last but not least, we have Pam Sen, who is a choreographer, an interdisciplinary performance maker, movement educator, and arts worker. Pam offers the breadth of her experiences, creativity, and intelligences to the work of anti-racism, anti-oppression, and conflict transformation in the arts and cultural sector, and is also a member of the Cultural Instigators. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'm very excited to have this discussion with all of you and to hear what everyone is going to have to say about this particular topic. So if you had a chance to read the description for the event, we wrote, to cultivate means to acquire or develop, and to harvest means to collect or obtain for a future use. So since the summer of 2020, equity, diversity, inclusion has obviously become top of mind throughout the cultural sector and a priority in funding. So in today's discussion, we want to explore some key questions and some of the complex issues that can arise from this important work. And one of the first questions, and I think it's appropriate to just jump right in, is to take a good look at who is actually cultivating and harvesting EDI and the money that's available for it. And I'd love to just throw this out to the floor right now and see what your thoughts are. What are some of the things that you have been seeing in your work since 2020? Soni, why don't we start with you?
Thank you so much, Shivani. It's great to share this amazing panel. Um, I I would just like to also begin by recognizing I'm a Miskawatch Wiskaigan on Treaty 6 territory. Lana Whiskey Jack is Indigenous teacher here and an artist. And one of the things that she talks about is where's your belly button buried? So I'm very much connected to this land, and I feel like um, how do I build my understanding of these complex issues around EDI in linkage to reconciliation as well, as you have mentioned. So I think what's very interesting to me is that the definitions of equity, diversity, inclusion, and sometimes justice are used in different ways. And it's important to understand semantics, sorry, about what this means. And also to understand our past and what has happened to understand our present in order to build a better future. And I really feel like there's a lot of buzzwords going around. There's a lot of tokenism. There's a lot of different ways that the multi-billion-dollar industry now of EDI is being used to maintain status quo and not really come at the core issues to break systems sometimes, especially in the arts and culture sector. Like I was just part of this big post-marginal retreat that was hosted last year, and I was asked to write some reflections on Theatre Alberta's page. And it's really difficult for a mainstream narrative to be shattered and disrupted. But people are trying. Like, I know Pam and Jordan have done some amazing work that I've really appreciated in the art sector that is really shifting this. But again, the question is about funding and livability and what do artists have to create that kind of community and capacity to build these narratives out that are maybe not part of the dominant discourse. So I'll leave it at that for now and pass it on to my other colleagues.
I just have to leave myself unmuted. That's what I'm going to do and be very quiet while the rest of you talk. Jordan, I saw you nodding your head. I'm wondering if you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, a lot of vigorous nodding for sure. I also love that you start off by you're sharing Sony by connecting to the land because I think that's really core to my practice too as a second generation racialized settler immigrant and how I position myself in this work. And more than that, I think, uh, just speaking from being a person born on the land in Treaty 7, there's this really powerful vision of the original signatories of the treaty that's about being owned by the land as a community. And so I think, having these prompts around harvesting and cultivating allows me a way to reflect upon um, what that connection to land is and how we stay accountable to and inspired by the vision of the original caretakers of this land, but then also to contrast what cultivating and harvesting as a society and communities have looked like recently. I think at the core of my work is really a critique of the nonprofit systems that all of us who are either working in social justice or its intersections in different sectors, like in my case for the arts, for me, the nonprofit system is really a thing that is born out of the conditions of capitalism and colonialism at the end of the day. Though these structures have, on one hand, an intention to be a force for good in the communities and something that communities can use to drive well-being, beneficial social outcomes, transformation, it ends up being a structure that actually centers those who have a lot of privilege and access within the conditions of capitalism and white supremacy. So, in other words, for me, at the core of it, these nonprofit systems and structures are actually kind of money laundering for the ill-gained wealth, power, and influence that's been accrued through colonial and capitalist systems. So the questions that Soni raises about who can actually work in that way, who can make this system and structure work for them, I think are really important, and the stakes are very high. Shivani, since you mentioned since 2020, when we have this global reckoning around colonialism and white supremacy, which is itself just a renewal of a conversation and a voice that has been coming in and out of our collective consciousness for 500 years, depending on our positions within these histories and our proximity to the types of violence and extraction and harm that really underpin what it looks like to live here on Turtle Island in this colonial state of Canada. So I'll pause there as well. I would love to hear how other folks enter this conversation.
I appreciate everything that's been said so far, and one of the inspirations for wanting to do this event is what we as an organization have observed over the last few years in terms of EDI and its obvious relationship and association to money, and the money that's available for it, and also who is able to access that money. So I'd love to hear from Alex and also from Pam. You know, what have you folks been seeing in your respective work? Alex, why don't you go first?
Well, totally what Jordan and Soni said resonates well with me, and I was going like, yes, I'm going to put my stand up here and say a few things. Like a big part of it is the fact that when I look at the efforts that are putting into EDI, I think, yes, there is true intent to want to change, but the system does not work. The system is broken in many ways. So take, for example, the federal government putting in money towards EDI initiatives. But is it for everybody, every person that requires that piece of work? At the end of the day, it's based on it, the way that it's been coming across is that it's who speaks out the most, who starts bringing up things. So you want money, it's there. There are for certain segments within equity seeking groups that get access to the money in many ways. That's not true equity in many ways. It's just a way of where it's being politicized in a way that people look at it and say, hey, how do I get to the next election and how do I get voted in? What do I need to do in that stream and so on? So to me, that part is about looking at it to say is, yes, there's intent, but there's also this overwhelming thing that's preventing it to shift in a direction the way that it makes true effectiveness as we go down this pathway. And there's more that I want to talk about it, but in light of time as well, I just want to make sure that Pam gets a chance to express also her thoughts on this. But this is a very difficult conversation because money is not available for everyone. And it's also mainly for the optics of what could be the future of where it's going as well. So.
Yeah. Pam.
I'm just checking in with my body and saying I feel heat. I feel heat, and my feet are like trying to find roots, but they can feel my ankles being like, because there's so much charge to questioning everything around our relationship to land and money and capitalism and colonialism and how it really ultimately impacts our bodies and how we are in relationship with each other. I think in my own practice, which is rooted here in Mohkinsis, Treaty 7, a lot of the questions that I'm holding in relation to everything that has been shared thus far is really about how white body supremacy, which is essentially the way in which our shaping as a society, our shaping as individuals here on Turtle Island has been so deeply impacted by this idea that a white male able-bodied cis hetero man is supreme and that the rest of us are defective in one way or another. And it really makes me think about how the word that comes to mind when cultivating and harvesting is this desire or the sensation of wanting to heal my relationship even to those words, because my relationship to the words of cultivating harvesting is even impacted by this idea of extraction and capitalism. Can I really come to that and feel into what those the potential and the right relationships that those words can actually mean, and how it becomes twisted when we start to think about um, the power structures and this effort to bring around equity, diversity, and justice. So I think those are the things that are kind of like landing with me right now in my body, and I'm going to pause there.
No, I appreciate that. And I love the perspective that Pam brings to the conversation as somebody that is, um, as somebody that inherently works with your body on a almost a daily basis because of the work you do as a choreographer. And I think Soni can relate to that as well. One of the questions that came up when we were preparing for the discussion, Pam, that you had asked is the cultivating and harvesting actually reciprocal or is it distraction? And I think it's a really great question. And Soni, I'd like to turn it over to you. Maybe we can elaborate just a little bit more on what we're seeing.
I love Pam's constant questioning of embodiment. She does it through her art so beautifully. I've witnessed her, um, I've shared space with her, and I felt it. And I really feel like, as a society, we're cut off from our bodies, like holistically. Like we don't check in with our bodies. We just think in our heads, and we see with our eyes sometimes. Very limited. But I think that that's why we that's why this sort of like space that we're in that is deemed to be normal. Like right now, I'm reading Gabor Mate's The Myth of Normal. Such a powerful book, right? Because it touches on this whole piece of white body supremacy, about colonization, about roles, about what is, why are we living this way where we are destroying our health and our well being, right? So within that frame as well, I think it's important for all of us as we are today to have this conversation and to really challenge the linearity of what does money mean? What does funding mean? What is a timeline? What does success mean? What does it mean to step into a space where you want to see everybody thriving, right? Because that's different than equity, diversity, inclusion. And thriving is different for each individual person and each collective community. So what does it actually look like right now, it's Diwali. So I'm Hindu, my parents came from India, so we also have a history of colonization following us to Canada. And as a second generation Canadian of South Asian origin, this time is a very dark time because it's between the autumn sort of equinox and the winter solstice. And there's lots of stuff that happens at this time in terms of going inward and understanding what it means to be in this space right now. And to me, these kinds of rituals, the kind of space that we share in intention setting and taking time to have spiritual reflection is important because constantly I myself am bombarded with so much negativity, with so much expectation. My kids as well. I have three kids. They are bombarded with all of this like racism, this not belonging, this what does this mean, mommy? So I feel like this actually has to be unpacked constantly every second in order to have a calm nervous system. And it's so challenging because people don't value that in society, especially in the context of wanting to create EDI as well. Because when you have EDI structures and systems that are intellectual, you keep on going on intellectual. This is the success. We've met this checklist. We've done this, but you're neglecting the relationships and the feelings that you have that cause further negativity, ill health, and animosity often.
And one of the things that you also talked about previously, Soni, is you talked about intellectual EDI and embodied EDI, and you've just touched on that. And I'm wondering if you might want to expand on some of that, because I think that's going to nicely lead us into other aspects of the discussion in terms of how this work has to be approached.
Totally. And I mean, intellectual EDI to me is a bit of what Alex said, right? Like the federal government, the provincial government, the municipal government. Oh, we recognize that we are such a diverse society. Let us try to put in some money or some structures or some leadership to diversify, right? But what does that mean? As a human experience, we're all diverse, right? So this is where I said in the beginning when we started, what is the past saying about this? The past has been set up, as Pam has said, with a white body supremacy, with a white colonial mentality, as Jordan has said. So that is what we're functioning in the system. So intellectually, what we're trying to reframe with good intention is this whole notion of how do we maneuver within the system. But people do not want to maneuver within the system. So when we talk about EDI, they don't want to talk about anti-racism. They don't want to talk about gender discrimination. They don't want to talk about LGBTQS. They don't want to because it's too threatening for them to come outside of that, right? So intellectually, it's really easy to be like, oh, we are diverse. Let us celebrate our diversity. So for 364 days, I can just be Canadian. And then the one day when it's Diwali, I'll wear my sari, I'll eat my samosa, I'll be like, Happy Diwali. And I'm there, right? So it's like, how does that work for people, right? Like, and what does this mean? So to me, that's the intellectual piece. It's like this kind of facade of like having that checklist. But the embodied piece is every day. Every day I leave my house, there's going to be something that happens. Anybody. But how do we process that? And how do we recognize that that's part of living within a society with these structures and negotiating that constantly? Like, this is a heavy conversation. Like Pam said, where do you feel it in your body? How do you then let go of that negativity or hold it? Why do we have so much disease sometimes? Inflammation, stress, high cortisol, type 1 diabetes rising, right? With COVID happening, it didn't happen. There are reports been done that say that when you experience racism, your body gets ill. But nobody wants to talk about these things, right? So to me, that embodied piece is also having the opportunity in the space to sit in it, recognize it, take time with it. And we're not given that time, unfortunately. So those two to me are very distinct. Like there's a very colonial, um, systemic, policy oriented way to understand intellectual EDI that's organizationally based, leadership based, but there's also the experience of embodied EDI that individuals and collectives are trying to also put words to, put language to, explain.
Mhm, mhm. Thank you for that. I loved the way that you described all of that, and I think like we could do more events. I think just on that topic, the distinction between those two. I want to come back to embodied EDI in just a moment, but first, I kind of want to steer the direction in terms of EDI and it not only being emergent work to a degree, although there are many practitioners that have been advocating for racial equity, racial justice for many years prior to 2020, and those folks have been doing amazing work when nobody else really wanted to touch the field. Um, but since 2020, because of the consciousness and the awareness that has been raised about the need for EDI, um, to a degree, it has become emergent work. We've seen quite a few people stepping into the field. And I want to talk about leadership right now when it comes to EDI work. And I also want to ask just a really pointed question: who should be leading it? And why is BIPOC leadership so important in this? And Alex, I want to start with you. And I want to get your thoughts, your perspectives on what you currently see in terms of leadership and what you'd like to see. Who should really be leading this work?
So very interesting question, and I think everybody's touched on it in so many ways that who's actually leading today is the person that does not understand necessarily what the true effect of, like as Soni said, it's stuck to the intellectual side of EDI, and I think it's saying like I'm leading because I think I know what everybody requires, and I think that's important. So I do definitely say that there is intent into wanting to build a diverse group of like a diverse organization, diverse communities, and so on. I think in the work that we've done with Next Evolution Ventures, one of the things that has been frustrating, but also has been opening my mind to things, is that the realization that this is a journey. This is a journey, and there is people are at different stages through this journey. And the world of EDI is just growing day by day. And we have to acknowledge that, and the fact that there are many people that don't even know the definitions of what diversity, inclusion, and equity means in many ways. Yet people are moving ahead so fast. You have new terminologies coming on a daily basis, and people are expected to catch up and get there. It gets very overwhelming. So there is a balance that needs to happen between understanding it. So the work that we've done essentially has been actually shifting our mindset in many ways to really get down to the truth of why do we need to do EDI work and so on. And that is about creating a sense of belonging for a person, whether it's in the community, whether it's in an organization, and so on. So when we talked to the leadership, and we did a very high-level survey about the top 4 tiers of leadership in Alberta. So we looked at different sectors. We looked at public, private, academic, the healthcare industry, the tech industry, and so on. And even though it's still high level, we're still waiting to validate this information. We're seeing that the top 4 levels have about 90 to 93% of people are white males, predominantly in their mid-50s. Even when there is diversity, it tends to be gender diversity, but it's still a white person mostly that's in that position. And here's where that I think the question that I think you brought up is, why is it important to have BIPOC leadership in it? I'll give myself as an example. Like, I'm a person of color, brown skin. My heritage is East Indian. I actually never lived in India for a long time. Like, I was born in Nigeria. I grew up in South Africa. I lived in UK. I've worked in Dubai. I've had stints in different parts of the world. I came here. I chose to make Canada my home. I've got lived experiences of what I've observed out there. The typical person that's usually in leadership roles today, their vacation is somewhere in Canada or Mexico or Bermuda. They don't necessarily have the lived experience. They don't have the knowledge of what different cultures are. So when you see diversity at the bottom levels usually. And as you start going into senior management roles, you don't see that diversity happening. Why I think it's important is because the person that has chosen to take a job and has come into this place comes with a different mindset. They don't necessarily know the Canadian way of what it means to get a promotion. In Dubai, for example, when we were hiring people, it was not about an interview process. It was all about who does a great job, we can get it, and so on. So your work essentially speaks for itself. Here, it's a sales pitch. You need to go through an interview. You need to express what it means to the organization to say why you should be promoted. Other places in the world really focus on the team aspect of it when it comes to job promotions, as compared to here, where it's all about a sales pitch. So there's a cultural shift. There's a whole cross, like you have to switch your behaviors, but there's nobody teaching you what that is. So having a person with a BIPOC in leadership roles, the first thing is relatable. I know when I was with the city of Edmonton, I was probably the first and probably the only one at that point in time that was BIPOC, but also under the age of 40, that was in a senior executive role. I've had people come up to me and say, you give us hope that there's a chance for us. And that speaks volumes to the part that people relate. They feel that, if there is something that goes wrong and they're not able to communicate it well, sometimes people do not just understand what they're saying if they could not relate it to somebody who is from a different culture, who's experienced this in many ways. So I could go long-winded about it. This can be a whole discussion in many ways, but I think it's important in so many ways to have that relatability, but also people with the experiences to do it. Or even if it is a person in color, it's opening your mind to actually learn and understand about what it could be.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I think it was Jordan who had said at the start of this conversation that when it comes to EDI, when it comes to the need to really create equitable spaces, and really what we're talking about is spaces that are free of systemic racism and discrimination, like places and spaces where really everyone is actually being included. Those stakes are really high. And for folks that come from underrepresented communities that identify as Black, Indigenous, people of color, racialized, um, we have lived experience with systemic racism and discrimination on the regular. For some folks, it's on a daily basis. I think we can all safely say that throughout the entire course of our lifetime, we have had to deal with this. And I mean, I like to think that I'm an optimist, but I'm also a realist. And the reality is that I know I will continue to experience systemic racism and discrimination in my life, specifically through my career. Um, so the stakes are really high because of, first of all, the impact that it has, as Soni talked about, on our health, our mental, emotional, psychological, spiritual health. Being able to wax poetic, like being able to have those intellectual conversations about EDI, or approaching the work in an intellectual way, um, and in particular when that's being led by folks that don't come from those underrepresented communities, inevitably the folks that are leading it in that context are not bringing that lived experience to it. So to summarize, I think in a simplified way, what I personally have seen and experienced time and time again when I don't see people from underrepresented communities attempting to lead EDI work is that they are not the ones experiencing racism. They are not the ones experiencing the kind of discrimination that underrepresented groups like BIPOC communities go through. And because they don't have that inherent understanding of it, I have to really question, and it's a question for all of you, are they the best people to be leading it? Like, who really should be leading this work? Because a big question for me that I want to explore in this conversation as well is, are underrepresented communities, is the BIPOC community actually being empowered to lead EDI? Jordan?
Yeah, I love the scope of this conversation, and I also love that even though we've got to this point, I'm able to pull threads from Soni and Alex and Pam through this. And so I think for me, I'd like to answer this question just by speaking for myself and from my own body and nervous system. I think uh, I'm hyper aware in doing this work of my own social location and positionality. I know that I get positioned and I have the opportunity to be platformed to share a lot of my perspectives because, as a 2.5 generation immigrant settler, not of this land, that my family is not from this land originally, like a lot of my upbringing, going through assimilation and code switching has given me the ability to speak with some sort of systems fluency when it comes to white supremacy and colonial structures. I think the challenge now is coming to my own sort of awakening of what it means for my body to be racialized, to be queer, to be non-binary, to be in some ways neurodiverse. Is it feels like that scene in the Matrix where your body is finally being dislodged from this like sticky, slimy bioenergy extractor, and you get shot out into this dystopia that's always been there, except you don't have white savior powers like Neo in the Matrix, right? So then what do you do, right? And so then at the core of that is like, what is leadership even, right? What are my capacities? What does it look like to lead in this and to make my best offerings in ways that uphold my values, but also are a way of centering the people who still aren't at the table because they don't share the same relative privileges that I do or that I have been able to assimilate into myself through, just a surviving. within the Colonial Project. So, for me, I'm very uncomfortable with the way that I get positioned into a nonprofit industrial complex as a consultant. I wonder if any of you feel that way too. I am uncomfortable with the way that I am often validated by white leadership because of how I speak, because I can treat with them on a way where I have conversancy around the structures and the hierarchies that they move through. But at the same time, I am there only to create conditions that will eventually make it safer and more equitable for the folks who are not at the table to join with me and then take up that space. So in my practice, I've made a very intentional effort to eschew a lot of the very practical things that would make my practice like a viable business. I don't have business cards. I don't have a website. I hardly do any promotion except for Instagram rants or just working with community, really. So my business card is the community that I've been working with and developing strong relationships with at a grassroots. And when I'm working with them, I'm often seeing that some of these folks, when they finally get invited into these systems and structures, they're either coming burned out, right? So they're coming into a system and a structure where, because they need these spaces in order to create conditions for their own survival and for their community survival and thriving, they've already been in that fight. Now they're coming into a structure that is going to extract more labor from them despite people's best intentions. And that's white leaders, but it's also just the folks that are in those structures. Even if you're racialized or equity deserving or any intersection of those identities, and you're working on a board or you're working within these hierarchical corporate style systems, the harm is going to be inevitable, right? It's a countdown, really. I've seen it happen since 2020. On my two hands, I can start counting how many instances of unintentional harm, and then at its worst, sometimes even lateral violence among equity deserving communities, individuals. Part of that is because we are wounded and are doing our healing while we're also trying to create the conditions for that to transform. And that's very different from someone that has white privilege or different types of social locations for whom volunteering on a board is something like what they were taught in high school. It's insulation for their CV, or it's a way of giving back all of the things that they were able to accrue by being conversant in the way that these systems constitute excellence, capability, efficiency, and even the tone of how we go through conflict, right? All of that lives in my body. I hold those complexities every time I show up in a space. I'm very much a learner when it comes to somatics. And so, Soni and Pam are my leaders and teachers in these sorts of spaces. And all I can do is really try to be honest with that, try to see how my own self-care and my own intimate relationship with my body and my nervous system is also a pathway for not only accountability, but also collective abundance for everyone that I'm in relation with. So I'll leave it at that for now. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts from anyone else about who should really be leading this work and what you're seeing, what you'd like to see more of? Go ahead, Pam.
Yeah. I think it's really important to for us to hold how are we defining leadership? I think right now, in some ways, we might be teetering on this idea that leadership is grounded in who has power and resources, and specifically economic power and resources. But to me, leadership is inherently happening within equity deserving communities already. It is about how are we collectively organizing and empowering one another to be able to shift change. Ultimately, leadership results in who has the power to make change. And of course, that is tied to money, but it also is tied to imagination and our ability to, as we've been talking about, embody and practice different ways that are going to guide us to a more just future. So that's something I felt is really important for us to kind of like touch in and continue to be in question around, because I've always had a really tricky relationship with leadership. And many of that reasons is because as a racialized body, I've internalized this idea that power, that being in my full power is dangerous, and that it may result in less safety or belonging if I were to inhabit that, because what I've witnessed of power in my day-to-day life has been misuse of power, not for a common humanity and like relationship to land and people and beings and life, not things that are life affirming. But if I take that away, if I were to reimagine and be like, okay, if I hold that I like, it is okay for me to be in my power, that it's not going to risk my peers, it's not going to risk more harm, even though we're in the real world, like we're gonna encounter conflict. That's just inevitable. That's in our everyday lives, and we can just accept that as a generative force if we'd like to. That maybe we could like humble ourselves a little bit and think about what is it to bring power to truth, which is actually the title of a project through a Cultural Instigators, which is an artist-led collective of artist activists centering anti-racism in their practices. And so the idea of bringing power to truth, which means resourcing, but actually like fundamentally developing embodied trust and willingness to deeply listen and let those land in our bodies so we can start to shift our shapings as individuals, as communities, as organizations and institutions, then maybe shift. Like leadership, being at the top of a CEO, like institutional organization, sure, there is that. But actually, I'm actually kind of tired of looking at it that way. It's a conversation. I'm like, oh, I want to hold the power of everyone else and just like celebrate it and continue pushing that forward. Final thought.
Thank you, Pam. So this leads nicely into embodiment, which was something I wanted to come back to in the discussion. And the question really is, why does everyone have to center our bodies and our nervous systems in this work? Soni, I'm going to jump over to you.
Yeah, so pulling along this thread of leadership and embodiment, like how earlier I'd spoken about intellectual embodiment and embodying embodiment in your body. So to me, intellectual embodiment is the kind of leadership that I think Alex has touched upon, right? Like you have a colonial system and you have people who are equity seeking, whatever that means. And you have definitions like equity, inclusion, diversity in this intellectual colonial project, as Jordan has said. And leaders are crabs in the bucket trying to get at the top by tweaking small things, but really it being tokenistic and not having any change because they're not reflecting on what is working and what is not. They're just hiving for the beeline, like the finish line, without taking stock of what is happening around them. And that's so harmful and it's so destructive because people are not taking the time to be reflective or being what is going on, like, and to me, I've been in enough institutions in my lifetime to see this continue. And I'm in one right now in some ways. So the thing is that, like Shivani said, this is not ending. This is continual. This is a continuation of how we are working in this colonial project. So that disrupts from a personal standpoint, my nervous system. It disrupts my embodied learning of how I belong in a Miskwachi's Waskaigan, because this is my home. It disrupts my relationships with my peoples, whether it be my arts peoples, whether it be my indigenous peoples, whether it be my family, because we are all experiencing harm in certain ways because of the way the system is set up, right? So, what is the remedy? To me, it's to really sit with that embodiment, to sit with that discomfort, to sit with the disruption that I want to create as a leader, to understand how it's going to impact different spaces that I sit in, as Jordan spoke about positionality and power, to understand who is a person who is going to sit with me and work with me through each step of the journey, and to recognize who is going to shut me down as soon as I open my mouth. To recognize that if I'm going to commit to leadership, that I have to know who I can work with and who will backstab me. Because these are all realities of how we function in the human experience, right? And I think when we put on the layer of EDI, it becomes more convoluted because now we're just adhering to labels and to systems and to labels that are put on us, and labels sometimes that I embody. Like, as a brown woman who is middle aged, who has 3 kids, I will not succeed in the current structure of a colonial project that's institutionalizing leadership in traditional ways. I know this now. And I'm not going to strive for that because that's not my goal in life. My goal in life is to create, like Pam said, a future of creativity and imagination where my children don't have to worry so much about these things and can create and be free and be happy and be okay in who they are and have a better experience of being truly Canadian. And their stories are Canadian stories. Their stories are not some diasporic, like Jamaican, whatever biracial thing they're experiencing. They're Canadian. This is their home. They are on Treaty 6, whatever they're experiencing here, this is how they're going to share their story. So it's not like equity seeking, it's not diasporic, it's their lives. So I don't know what that means, and I hope that the future will offer some sort of space for that to emerge. But this is where I'm sitting with those two things about embodying that and about recognizing the intellectual piece.
And I think, in terms of embodiment, like there's a distinct relationship between embodiment and a scarcity mindset, which fundamentally is driven by a fear, right? And we've seen this come up many times in many different conversations about EDI, in many different conversations about anti-racism. We have heard many people say over the last few years that people have to take the time to sit with this and be willing to get a little bit uncomfortable. But I think we're getting to a point now where, since it is 2022, there that really has to start happening if we want to see some progressive shifts and we actually want to see a world that's really and truly inclusive and equitable. Um, and and when we talk about a scarcity mindset and we talk about what that's driven by, which is a fear. So a fear of there will be a lack of this or a lack of that, or just barreling forward, in an intellectual EDI context, because there's this need to, for example, get that money as quickly as we can because we need it. Because if we don't get it, then we won't get anything, and everybody else will get the rest of it. And the thing is, I mean, we see that kind of mentality time and time again in other contexts outside of EDI. But in the context of EDI and as it relates to underrepresented groups and how that negatively impacts us, it's really important to just really, like, I think, drill down and say it. And I think that we might be getting to a point where we're going to have to start calling it out, because if we keep moving down this path that we've been moving down, like we're kind of reverting back to where things were maybe before 2020, um, we as underrepresented groups need to start seeing some serious change, and we need to be empowered to be able to help lead that change. So when it comes to cultivating and harvesting EDI in the right ways, I'd like to shift our focus now to what we need to see more of and what people should be doing. we could spend quite a bit of time just on that subject, but we have a little bit of time left. And I think it's important to start touching on it. And Alex, I'm wondering if you want to jump in. Jordan, I see your head nodding as well. So whoever wants to go first, go ahead, Alex.
I'll be blunt. Like, I think I still have a little bit of optimism that the world will change, and it's going to change in so many ways. What that means to me is the fact that it still takes a lot of effort and work that we still need to be doing it. And everybody, like, I have to acknowledge everybody on this call, because sharing your vulnerabilities is part of our life here as we challenge the system. Sharing the ways that we're, like, what we've, like, the different energies, the different mindsets, where we position ourselves, are all part of that journey. And kudos to all of you for showing your vulnerabilities, because that is a huge step towards making that shift in things. There was the recent, like, what Soni talked about, Diwali. Diwali is a huge piece. I've never really had the opportunity to learn through this. But I've had the chance to be participants to the festival through brief things as such. And one of the things that I noticed is about learning in many ways. And it's trying to see that we have so many diverse pieces. We have so many different cultures. There are leaders in many positions that actually tend to preach things that are different from their religion. And I think that's an opportunity to just even shift the narrative a bit to talk about what did they learn. And I think that makes a huge change in how you could harvest this, because this is about learning. This is about learning and growing and understanding in many ways. And a big part of it is about just knowing that it's okay that you don't know everything. It's okay to be uncomfortable. It's okay to say, I'm not learned. I am not in that position to potentially get the help that's needed. And that's the vulnerabilities that I think need to come to move the dial on EDI. Like I said, we had to change our mindset. It was not about equity, diversity, and inclusion anymore, because that talks about just the systems and the process. This is about a mindset. It's changing an environment. It's also about changing the tone of how we take these things. And for us, it's about creating that sense of belonging. To me, it's about that. Soni brought it, like, talking about your kids. I'm doing this for my son, because I don't want him to go through the pains that I've been through. I want him to know that he's part of the Canadian culture, and he is going to live his life without having that fear of things going wrong for him. That's my intent. That's my purpose. And so it's, what do we do to make that happen? And it's learning, understanding, and doing what needs to, and standing up. Like, I have to say this, because when the Premier of Alberta mentioned that thing about the most discriminated people and referred to a certain group, the people that supported her were people, it was BIPOC, non-BIPOC people that actually responded to her as well. But if I were to tell about something that happened to me, there might be people in the background that support me, but there's nobody going to be coming out in front. I have to be the voice. I have to be my own voice as well. That's my feeling. And I think that's the feeling that a lot of BIPOC people have, is that we're on our own. We don't have that allyship that's required to be able to stand up for us when we need the help that's required.
I really appreciate the honesty there. Thank you. And I also think it's, what drives you to do the work is your son, and wanting to create a better future for your son, I think, is a really beautiful thing, and I think there are a lot of people that could probably relate to that. I'd love to hear from everyone else before we wrap things up. How can cultivating and harvesting EDI be done in the right way? And Jordan, I saw you nodding your head as well before Alex spoke.
My bobblehead is always going when I'm doing deep listening. So, but I'm grateful for the chance to speak. I'm really grateful, Alex. Also, I have nothing to add in terms of the inventory and the complexity of the labor that Alex just described that racialized people are doing. And in the spirit of this opportunity to call out and to use a platform, I also want to name that the five of us here are also in this right in this very moment we're doing labor. We are doing the incomparable labor of imagining ourselves through our bodies, and also transcending those bodies and connecting through communities and disrupting systems and transcending the impact of our lifetimes and all of this stuff. So let's name that, right? That's happening. But I also want to use this platform to speak directly to white folks, right? So yes, we are going to have lots of conversations about the need to center equity deserving folks, racialized folks in leadership, whatever that looks like. And we are seeing, I work a lot of with a lot of grassroots organizations. We are seeing movement there. But sometimes what I'm also seeing is abdication, right? So what is not part of this conversation, which is about an unhindered plurality and a shared sense of belonging that also includes white people, I'm not seeing white people sometimes leaning into the discomfort that will allow them to. I hate even using the word ally, because like EDIA, it seems so fraught and messy right now. But I will say, if you want to be in relation to this work and you want to be a part of that renewed sense of belonging that we could have together on this planet, there has to be a role for you as well, right? So what I ask of you, what I'm admonishing you to do, is to really think about what offerings you can make, just like how when I think about my own privileges and my own positionality, I'm thinking about how I'm leveraging that. How do you, as a white body or any other sort of privilege identity and intersection of that, when you have relative comfort showing up in these systems, what does it look like for you to leverage that to help us keep hacking this system from the inside out and transform it? Because like I said, I'm seeing all of these equity deserving folks come into so-called positions of leadership pre-burnt out. And then what I'm also seeing as a general trend, I'm not reading any particular group or organization that I've worked with or haven't worked with. What I'm seeing is, using the excuse of centering BIPOC leadership, white folks who have been holding these systems and have been benefiting from them are abdicating and stepping out of board positions, stepping out of staff positions where they actually have a lot to offer in terms of how we bridge the gaps, in terms of creating handles for people to actually shift these systems, right? So yes, there is a role for you within this. There is a place in our utopia. Actually, I don't think our utopia exists without you, right? But if you're not willing to consider what it means to show up, right, in a way where that doesn't assume you in a hierarchical position of leadership, that doesn't assume you taking up a lot of space, that which is all of these things become saviorism, then you're also diminishing your capacity to be in relation with us in that way. And I think that's the myth of whiteness, is to create this sense of normal that also invisibilizes white people's capacity to relate beyond the comfort that they derive from colonials and white supremacist systems, right? So I'm reading you right now hard for the whole fucking internet and the world, but it's also to say that I see you, and this call-in is an invitation that's born from my love. We grew up together. We know each other. We love each other. We've harmed each other, and we navigate harm in relative and different ways. So let's find a way to bring everything we have, dump out our purse on the table, and figure this out together. That's my love letter to you, white folks, right now. And I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Jordan. That was a fantastic love letter. Thank you. I want to hear from everybody else before we wrap things up. Soni and Pam. Soni, why don't you go ahead?
Thank you. It's so amazing to share this space. Shivani, thank you for calling all of us together to have this conversation. So I'm just gonna talk about cultivation and harvesting as part of an inquiry that I have. So I hate this term BIPOC, right? I hate Black, Indigenous people of color. Because it's just like 42% of Eminent's population is BIPOC. 40% of, like it's just a stat, right? Like there's no humanness to it sometimes. And it irritates me. So I just want to put that on the table because I know that we need to understand this as part of EDI and equity seeking and all these systems pieces. But then when we keep on using this language, it takes away from a lot of things, like Jordan said, I think, right? So how do we also understand this diversity within this as well? And that leads to my point of like, as a Treaty 6 person, as a person who, as Shivani said, we are on land that has been stolen. What is my relation to the land? What is my relation to Indigenous peoples in Canada? There's such different ways of understanding this interface. I've worked a lot with Indigenous communities in Ontario, in Alberta, and I don't even understand. I'm just on the tip of the iceberg. I have no, like, that humbleness, like that kind of um, understanding and building together, and not making assumptions and not falling into the trap of bias or feeling like oppressed in different ways. Like I don't even know how to explain what I'm feeling. Like there's so much harm that's been done to just communities by the state, by settlers. Like how do I also navigate that and negotiate that and understand that as part of my embodied healing? This is important in order to move forward when we are on Turtle Island, especially. Um, so for me, it's like one step at a time. How do I build that relationship with each person to understand that in my periphery, and then whatever my learning is, feel comfortable to bring it wherever I need to shift and to change and to transform. Those are the things that I think are important as part of a relation, as part of reflection, and as part of building a new pathway forward and not falling into the regular patterns that we do. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Soni. And Pam?
Yes, basically I have all this energy and vitality in my body from this conversation. And if I were to sit with what I feel and can imagine could lead to doing EDIA better. And I say A because I think access is always forgotten about. And I think it's really important that we have a conversation about accessibility. That's another one of those things that like are kind of never put at the center of space, which I think is actually fundamentally essential for EDI and justice, is I would like to see more practice. You know, there is a thing about like sitting in the uncomfortable, digesting the feelings, and I deeply believe that is important. And I think the next step is developing a discernment around what one's body's responses are to this sitting in the discomfort, and developing the capacity and iteratively practicing more life-affirming ways to be in relationship with one another. So if we're thinking about, you know, white bodies, but in so many bodies, our human experience is full of shame. How do we actually process, acknowledge our shame, and then be responsible for the ways that that shame shows up in the way we relate to our work, the way we are able to apologize from center, the way we're able to acknowledge harm, because all of us not only experience harm, but we create harm to others. And so ultimately, that practice of discernment within self, which becomes that insight, embodied insight, moves into practicing that in our relationships, then we can start to actually change the way that we are coming to and showing up for equity, diversity, inclusion, accessibility, and ultimately justice. Without the practice, our bodies under stress are just going to go back to how we're used to surviving. That is the way we have evolved. We are surviving. And if my survival mechanism is to shrink when I'm being asked and given space to be empowered, or if my practice is to shrink, or if a white body is to shrink when someone is coming to them and say, you hurt me. We have to talk about this. And if we can't face each other and actually like understand what we're responsible for and hold that with as much the word's not coming to me, but like a centeredness, like without trying to deflect that to someone else or like overly shame ourselves for that too, then there's like no room for the next steps. So practicing so that we can create more possibility and choice ultimately. So
Amazing.
thank you.
Amazing. I just want to thank everyone so much. I think it's clear, like, we could probably keep talking about this. We are at time, believe it or not. That's been an hour. I want to thank my guests once again, Jordan Baylon, Soni Dasmohapatra, Pam Tzeng, and also Dinu, Philip Alex, for joining us today for a really great conversation about cultivating and harvesting EDI. I want to thank everyone that had the chance to tune in and watch this. And if folks missed it, or if you're catching the tail end of this, this will be available online on our website at creativesempowered.ca. And you can also watch it on our YouTube channel and our Facebook page. Please feel free to check out the website, creativesempowered.ca. If you're from the BIPOC and underrepresented community, you can learn more about our organization and what we're all about. Doing events like this one and creating this space to be able to have this type of conversation is a key part of our mission and what we do. And a big reason why we do it is because it lets us share these things publicly in a way that is safe. And what we have been finding is that it becomes an incredible opportunity for people to also learn, to listen, to learn, to expand their awareness. And that helps to move everything forward. Also, if you haven't already, you can also follow us and support us on social media. So it's pretty easy to find us. It's Creatives Empowered on Facebook and IG, and it's EPOC Empowered on Twitter. We're doing our best to try and spread the word about our organization. And the more that people have a chance to learn about us, the more we keep hearing about the kind of value there is to have an organization like this in Alberta. So thank you once again, everyone, for tuning in, for watching, for listening. I hope you all have a beautiful rest of your day. And thank you once again to our amazing guests. Take care.